And then there's the issue of Greg Bovino's phony groin injury. More lies. They just lie. You touch them, they lie and say you injured them. On October 3rd, the liar, Kristi Noem, she's also the head of Homeland Security, she visited the Broadview detention facility in the suburbs of Chicago where migrants are supposed to be temporarily detained. They're held there for days, and they're not equipped to handle long-term arrivals. That's why they only can get one meal a day. They don't have nurses. They don't have doctors. They don't have separate toilet facilities for men and women, open-air toilets for men and women. So Kristi Noem showed up for a photo shoot at Broadview Detention Facility in the suburbs of Chicago on October 3rd. There were 100 protesters standing outside the facility trying to get in the way of cars leaving. Wearing riot gear, Greg Bovino led his ICE agents into the protesters. One protester, according to Greg Bovino, shoved Bovino so hard, Bovino claims he sustained a groin injury that he later claimed required 2 weeks of paid leave. Bovino, we know, grabbed that protester, who Bovino claims injured his groin. Bovino made an arrest after violently wrestling that protester to the ground. Well, Bovino's story then changed. First, he said he was punched, then he said he was shoved. But body cam footage shows Bovino shoved first, and nobody's certain whether the man he shoved back, but somehow Bovino's groin got injured? Video shows Bovino was never touched near the groin. Yeah, because the only way Bovino gets his groin touched if he's willing to part with $50 in the back alley out by a dumpster. The video shows that he incited that physical confrontation. And how do I know this? How do I know he's a liar? Because prosecutors, surprise, surprise, dropped charges against the protester who Bovino arrested and charged with assaulting a federal officer's groin. I don't think we can find Greg Bovino's groin. I think he's got an innie. Well, Bovino is now down in Charlotte. During his tenure leading Operation Midway Blitz, there were at least 100 unprovoked incidents of unnecessary use of force against protesters that involved tear gas, flash grenades, and violent arrests, all in direct violation of the protesters' First and Fourth Amendment rights. Starting in December, the Seventh Circuit Court begins to hear several appeals filed by protesters who did win a temporary restraining order on ICE's use of tear gas, only to have that restraining order revoked by a higher court. There's also the issue of a Biden-era consent decree that forbids ICE and the Customs Border Patrol from making any arrests in Illinois, Indiana, Wisconsin, Missouri, Kentucky, and Kansas without a judicial warrant or an administrative warrant. There's a consent decree dating back to the Biden presidency saying ICE officers, Custom Patrol officers in Illinois, Indiana, Wisconsin, Missouri, Kentucky, and Kansas cannot make an arrest without either a judicial warrant or an administrative warrant. Because most of the arrests made by ICE during Operation Midway Blitz lacked judicial and or administrative warrants, these were basically federal agents grabbing people randomly off the street. Their activity this year violates that consent decree. So a judicial warrant is signed by a judge, and it allows ICE to make an arrest and, if specified, search somebody's property. An administrative warrant is signed by an administrator inside the Department of Homeland Security. If ICE only has an administrative warrant, ICE can knock on a person's door. They can ask that person to step out of their apartment, but ICE, with an administrative warrant, lacks the authority to kick open the door to make the arrest or search the premises. So let's review. Know your rights. If ICE knocks on your door, you ask, do you have a warrant? If they don't have a warrant, if you're filming it, you might say, go F yourself. If they don't have a warrant, call the local police and say, there's a home invasion. If they have a warrant, then, and pay attention, Ask, is it a judicial or an administrative warrant? Repeat after me. Do you have a judicial or an administrative warrant? Do you have a judicial or an administrative warrant? If it's an administrative warrant, that means it was signed by somebody at ICE or the Department of Homeland Security. You don't have to open the door, okay? If it's a judicial warrant, and those are hard to get, then you have to cooperate. So if it's not a judicial warrant, you don't have to cooperate with ICE if they knock on your door.